Are you concerned about maintaining your privacy after you're gone? Do you want to protect your estate and beneficiaries from public scrutiny? Today, we're diving deep into how a living trust can be your shield. Hi, I'm estate planning attorney Mike Smith with Smith Barid LLC, and I'm one half of the Estate Planning Guys. In today's video, we'll explore how a living trust can safeguard your privacy and keep your estate matters confidential. So let's start by talking about why privacy might be important to you. If you don't have a trust in place, then your estate is going to go through probate. In many cases, that will require both the filing of the will, that's always required, with the probate court, which is a public proceeding. So anybody can come pull the file at the probate court or search on the internet and get access to that will. But secondly, in many cases, the executor is going to have to file an inventory of everything that was in your estate. And again, that's public record on the court record. So that means that unscrupulous actors out there can get that information and know what it is that your beneficiaries are going to be inheriting from your estate, down to oftentimes their names and addresses, phone numbers, lots of information. So you've got people out there who have ill intent that are getting information about who your beneficiaries are, perhaps how much they're going to get, and contact information for them. So that's kind of a recipe for a disaster, a recipe for a fraudster to take advantage of your beneficiaries. And that is a key reason that you might want to have privacy for your estate after you pass away. But let's consider that you could get in a car wreck and get sued, or you could be a partner in a business deal that doesn't go well and you could wind up getting sued, or even, some situation that you had no fault at all in and somebody just decides they're going to file a lawsuit against you. And if your assets are easily verifiable in the public records, so for example, if I can go do a title search at the courthouse and determine that you live in $1 million mansion, then I know my lawsuit is worth pursuing because I feel pretty good that I can get that judgment that I get against you collected. Or if I get a judgment against you, I can collect on that. So even during your lifetime, keeping some privacy around your assets can be a really important thing if you're in a high profile job or you're a public figure, those sorts of things. I was recently contacted by a divorce attorney who wanted to make sure that her home and other assets weren't visible in the public records because she didn't want some opposing party to, potentially come after her. So there are all kinds of reasons that you might want to keep your assets and your beneficiaries' inheritance private and out of the public record. So privacy, super important. One of the ways we can do that is with a properly structured living trust. So let's talk about what a living trust is. A living trust is a revocable trust that's established during your lifetime, and it's basically a bucket into which you're going to drop your assets. And as long as you're competent, so you got your marbles about you, and you're alive, then you're in total control of that bucket. You can do whatever you want to with the assets that are in that bucket. That is a living trust. The other type of trust that we sometimes use for estate planning is, or another type of trust we sometimes use, is called an irrevocable trust. So notice the key difference there. Revocable means that you can revoke and change the trust anytime you want to. Irrevocable means that it's basically set in stone once you set it up and execute the documents, and you can't make changes to it very easily after that. So revocable and irrevocable. The revocable trust is what we use a lot of times with estate planning. The great thing about it is that it avoids probate when you pass away. So we don't have that public filing in the courthouse that details all of your assets and who's getting what. It also helps with incapacity. So if you have an incapacity event, we don't need to go to probate court to get a conservatorship put in place. And if done right, a living trust can give you some privacy. Now, it's not the same as an irrevocable trust, an asset protection trust, which could give you another level of privacy, if you will, but there are privacy benefits that you can obtain with a living trust. So let's talk a little bit about what those privacy benefits are from a living trust and kind of how we can achieve that. So if you name your living trust, so like I said, my name is Mike Smith. If I name my living trust the Mike Smith Living Trust, and then I transfer my real estate into my living trust, well, it's pretty clear who owns the trust, and it's pretty clear that, what assets are in it. So if we want some privacy around our trust, then we need to come up with a name that doesn't necessarily tell anybody who we are. So, you might have the 2024 ABC Trust, or you can make up whatever name you want. I've had clients do all kinds of creative things around naming their trusts, and you can name it whatever you want. Don't include your name in the trust. And then at the very least, when you transfer property into it, it's not going to be obvious that that's your trust. Now, if you think about it for a second, if we set up a living trust for you and it's called the Blackacre Trust, doesn't use your name at all, but then you transfer your house into the trust, well, we give it a little bit of thought, we're probably going to realize, hey, while Mike Smith doesn't own that anymore, Blackacre Trust does, I'm pretty sure Mike's the one that transferred that in there. So if we want to add another level of anonymity to things, then we can have an interim step where you could transfer, and there could be tax implications to this, but you could transfer your house into an LLC, for example, and then the LLC can be managed, and the manager for the LLC can be somebody other than you. So you're an owner, you're a member of the LLC, but that's not recorded anywhere, in Georgia anyway, and you can have a third party who's the manager of the LLC, so that person's not you either, so it becomes less clear as to who owns that asset once we go into the LLC. Now, there are some new rules around reporting who the owners of an LLC are, but that information is kept private by FinCEN, so you don't have to disclose that. It's not in the public record anywhere. At least it's difficult to get that information. So by transferring it into an LLC and then into the trust, we could disguise, somewhat who the owner of it is. Now, that might not work for you. An LLC might not be a right vehicle for your house because you could lose like a homestead exemption, that sort of thing. So another option would be that you would transfer that property to some third party. So you may keep a percentage of it for yourself, like maybe you keep 1%. That would maintain your homestead exemption, and then you could transfer 99% to a third party, and then they can transfer it then into the trust. That would give you a little bit more anonymity around who owns the property. And again, you need to consult with an attorney before you do something like that, because there could be ramifications, there could be tax implications. You need to explore all of that. So we're just talking in general terms about things you could do if you wanted to achieve a bit more privacy. And then the other thing to consider is who's the trustee of the trust. So if you're serving as the trustee of the trust, the name of the trustee could often show up in the public records. So you need to name a third party as the trustee if you want anonymity. So you name a third party to serve as the trustee of your trust. You're still the beneficiary, but you name a third party as the trustee, and you effectuate the transfer of your real property from yourself into the trust, and then they can resign as the trustee and you can then serve as the trustee. So they can appoint you as the trustee after the transfer is taken place, and then you can serve as the trustee. And that gives a little bit more anonymity. It is not a surefire, privacy protection, but what it does is it takes your name out of the public record. So it's not obvious that you own the property anymore. This third-party trust that doesn't have your name attached to it, at least in the public record, owns the property. And so it just becomes more difficult to find out who owns the property, but it's not an absolute cloak or shield of invisibility, if you will. So those are some things you can do with a living trust to get a little bit more privacy than you would have normally. If it's super important to you to achieve privacy and asset protection, then you really want to think about an irrevocable trust. And an irrevocable trust can offer asset protection for the assets that are in the trust. There are many different ways you can set up asset protection trusts with your spouse, perhaps as a beneficiary, where your spouse has access to the trust, but you don't, and then they can take distributions from the trust. You can use other jurisdictions. I happen to use Nevada when I need to set up an asset protection trust. It has great statutes around asset protection, but there are other states, Alaska, South Dakota, Wyoming, Tennessee, who offer asset protection in the form of an irrevocable trust. So if asset protection is really what you're most concerned with over just privacy, then you're going to want to think about using an irrevocable trust for that asset protection. And that can protect you from creditors, and it can protect your beneficiaries from creditors. There are some trade-offs. You do lose some control over the assets if you put them into an irrevocable trust, and there can be tax implications. So you need to explore anything like that with an estate planning attorney who absolutely knows what they're doing. That is not for the faint of heart. If you are looking to obtain privacy in your planning, you're looking for asset protection, I urge you to talk with an estate planning attorney to create a trust for you that meets your individual privacy and estate planning goals. So if you're looking to protect your privacy and ensure your estate is managed according to your wishes, a living trust might be the solution. Contact an estate planning attorney to discuss the options and tailor a plan that's just right for you. Thank you for watching. Privacy and estate planning is important to you. value, consider subscribing for more insights and tips. And don't forget to like and share this video if you found it helpful. See you in the next video. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, then take a moment right now to subscribe by clicking below and turn on the bell notification so you get notified every time we post up a new video. Right now we're posting 3 videos a week with lots of information about various estate planning topics, so you're going to want to make sure to stay on top of that. Click below to subscribe and click right over here to watch the next most relevant video about estate planning. Go watch it now.